The story of The Dirty Dozen didn't start with Hollywood lights or a blockbuster budget. It started with a controversial idea that could have easily sunk the film before it ever hit the screen. Imagine this, a group of misfit soldiers, criminals, even sent on a near-suicidal mission during World War II. In 1967, this concept was downright scandalous. Studios were terrified. Who would pay to see murderers turned heroes? Yet somehow, this audacious premise found its way to the big screen, and the result would shock audiences worldwide. What most people don't realize is that the movie was based on a 1965 novel that already had a cult following, but Hollywood execs weren't convinced. They thought the material was too dark, too gritty, and far too violent for mainstream audiences. Director Robert Aldrich had to fight tooth and nail just to get the green light. He pitched the idea over and over, facing rejection after rejection. But he had one secret weapon: a roster of actors who were fearless, unpredictable, and ready to shake up the industry. And speaking of the cast, the original lineup almost looked like a ticking time bomb. Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, Jim Brown, John Cassavetes, these weren't your typical clean-cut stars. They had reputations for being tough, unruly, and sometimes downright unmanageable. The synergy or chaos between these personalities would eventually define the film, giving it an energy and realism that audiences hadn't seen before. Behind the scenes, the production was less about scripted perfection and more about harnessing the raw, unpredictable talent of these men, many of whom had real-life experiences in combat or street brawls that lent authenticity to their roles. But the story of The Dirty Dozen's origins doesn't stop at casting drama. The film emerged at a time when America was still grappling with the aftermath of World War II, yet on the brink of another controversial conflict, Vietnam. Audiences were drawn to the story's anti-heroic undertones, its unapologetic violence, and its morally gray heroes. It was unlike anything seen in war films of the era. The idea that criminals could be molded into soldiers for a government mission was radical, and that radical edge became a signature that would haunt the movie for decades. And here's a twist few remember. The script itself underwent drastic changes before cameras even rolled. Some characters were originally written to meet a more acceptable hero archetype, but Aldrich pushed for authenticity over approval. He wanted his misfits flawed, brash, and dangerously real. This was a gamble. Studios were nervous, but history shows us that this gamble paid off. By the time filming began, The Dirty Dozen was poised to shock the world, not just with its story, but with the raw, edgy personalities that fueled every frame. If you think the action on screen in The Dirty Dozen was intense, wait until you hear about the chaos that unfolded behind the cameras. The cast alone could have filled its own movie, an unpredictable, combustible mix of egos, rivalries, and secrets. Lee Marvin, the tough-as-nails lead, was notorious for his temper. On the first day of filming, he reportedly snapped at a crew member for a minor mistake, setting the tone for what would be weeks of high tension. Charles Bronson, equally formidable, had no patience for any perceived disrespect, and their on-set clashes became the stuff of legend. Then there was Jim Brown, the football star turned actor, whose presence alone commanded attention. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind, and this sometimes put him at odds with fellow cast members. Yet, strangely, these tensions fueled a raw chemistry on screen. Director Robert Aldrich reportedly encouraged the clashes, knowing that real friction would make the dangerous, high-stakes mission of the film feel more authentic. But it wasn't all shouting and fist fights. The set was also a playground for pranks and mischief. John Cassavetes, the brooding, intense actor, enjoyed unsettling his co-stars with bizarre stunts and unexpected behaviors. One day, he allegedly swapped someone's gun prop with a harmless but startlingly loud device, sending actors diving for cover. These antics, while sometimes aggravating, added a layer of unpredictability to the filming process. For a movie about criminals and outlaws, the cast's real-life antics mirrored the chaos on screen in a strangely perfect way. Even minor cast members got involved in the drama. Rumors persist about secret alliances forming between actors, whisper campaigns behind closed doors, and subtle sabotages during critical scenes. Extras and stuntmen reportedly witnessed arguments escalate to shouting matches that stopped filming for hours. Some say these tensions almost led to scenes being scrapped entirely. And yet, this controlled chaos, if you could call it that, gave the film an energy that meticulous planning never could. What's even more shocking is that some of the feuds were never fully resolved. Years later, interviews reveal that the bitter feelings between a few cast members lingered long after the credits rolled. Yet, paradoxically, these clashes helped create one of the most dynamic ensembles in cinematic history. Each actor brought a unique intensity, a personal edge, and a touch of unpredictability that made The Dirty Dozen not just a story about soldiers, but about real men testing their limits, on and off the screen. And just when you think the drama couldn't get any stranger, consider this. Aldrich occasionally staged fake arguments or orchestrated minor conflicts to provoke genuine reactions. Imagine being caught between two powerhouse actors, both capable of explosive temper, and suddenly realizing the director is egging you on. Sounds insane, but it worked. The tension, frustration, and occasional panic translated directly into the film's unforgettable energy. If you thought The Dirty Dozen was just about clever dialogue and memorable characters, think again. The film earned its legendary status in large part because of the jaw-dropping stunts and the real danger behind them. Long before CGI or safety protocols dominated Hollywood, actors and stuntmen risked life and limb to make every explosion, gunfight, and daring jump feel brutally real. And for some scenes, brutally real was no exaggeration. One of the most infamous sequences involved the climactic assault on the German chateau. The explosions weren't just special effects. They were carefully calculated pyrotechnics that still left actors with singed hair and burned eyebrows. Lee Marvin reportedly walked away from one blast with a minor concussion, though he brushed it off as part of the job. Charles Bronson had a stunt gone wrong that left him bruised and limping for days, yet he returned to the set without complaint. The cast's commitment to realism pushed the boundaries of what audiences had seen in war films up to that point. Even the simplest-looking scenes carried hidden danger. There were moments when actors had to climb precarious ledges, maneuver around live fire, or handle weapons that weren't always 100% safe. Jim Brown, known for his athleticism, performed stunts that others refused, including daring leaps across open courtyards under heavy gunfire. The intensity wasn't staged. It was real, and crew members often held their breath during takes, unsure whether everyone would come out unscathed. But the physical risk wasn't the only danger. Some scenes veered into psychological intensity that many cast members later described as overwhelming. Aldrich pushed actors to inhabit the mindset of men who had nothing to lose, sometimes isolating them or forcing tense confrontations to capture raw emotion on film. Some veterans on set reportedly found this approach unsettling, claiming the line between performance and reality blurred too much. And then there were the accidents no one saw coming. A minor miscalculation during a stunt left props and debris flying into unintended directions, narrowly missing actors and crew. Yet, rather than halt production, Aldrich encouraged improvisation, demanding that the actors react in real time, turning potential disasters into authentic cinematic moments. It was risky, reckless even, but it gave the film a visceral authenticity that audiences could feel. The legacy of these stunts lives on. Behind the humor, drama, and clever lines, The Dirty Dozen is also remembered as a film where real danger lurked at every corner. Injuries were common, tempers flared, and the line between acting and surviving often blurred. Every time viewers watch those chaotic battle scenes, they're not just seeing fictional heroism. They're witnessing the courage, recklessness, and sheer determination of a cast willing to go to extreme lengths for one unforgettable cinematic experience. While audiences were dazzled by explosions, witty banter, and chaotic camaraderie, what happened behind the scenes of The Dirty Dozen was far darker, and Hollywood did everything it could to keep it quiet. Studios carefully curated the public image of the film, portraying it as a daring yet fun war adventure. But insiders knew a different story, one of tension, controversy, and secrets that would shock even the most devoted fans. For starters, the studio quietly altered parts of the script to downplay some of the grittier aspects of the soldiers' criminal pasts. In the original novel, several of the characters had far darker histories, including serious crimes and moral ambiguities that were considered too edgy for 1960s audiences. The studio softened these elements for promotional purposes, attempting to make the story more palatable while retaining just enough danger to intrigue viewers. Then there were the injuries and near disasters that were conveniently left out of publicity materials. Lee Marvin's concussion, Charles Bronson's bruises, and multiple stuntmen's accidents were never disclosed in official reports. In fact, press interviews often depicted the set as organized chaos, downplaying how close some scenes came to turning deadly. Crew members later admitted that management actively discouraged discussion of these incidents, fearing lawsuits or negative publicity. Even the on-set conflicts were partially censored from the public eye. Feuds between major stars like Marvin, Bronson, and Jim Brown were known among crew and cast, yet studio PR spun the cast as a tight-knit band of brothers. Some insiders claim that actors were coached during interviews to avoid mentioning any tension, ensuring that the film's promotional image remained exciting but drama-free. There's also an unspoken secret regarding certain deleted scenes. Some of the film's most shocking moments, intense violence, morally ambiguous decisions, and darker executions, were cut not because of pacing, but because the studio feared public outrage. Years later, these scenes were partially restored in special editions, revealing just how daring and raw Aldrich's vision truly was. Audiences finally glimpsed the edge that had been hidden for decades, adding new layers of controversy and fascination to a classic film. And perhaps the most unsettling secret of all? Rumors persist about unscripted moments caught on film. Some stunts went too far, some actors reacted violently in real time, and crew members sometimes had to improvise solutions to accidents that were never meant to happen. These behind-the-scenes horrors, suppressed by studio control, are now part of the whispered legend of the Dirty Dozen. The chaos, danger, and darkness that were never meant to be seen only make the film's legacy more electrifying, and its mysteries even harder to forget. Decades after its release, The Dirty Dozen remains more than just a war film. It's a cultural phenomenon wrapped in controversy, legend, and secrets. Fans remember the daring missions, the iconic performances, and the explosions that defined a generation of war movies. But beneath the surface lies a tapestry of stories, mysteries, and bizarre truths that many viewers still don't know. For one, the film's influence on Hollywood cannot be overstated. Its success opened the door for anti-hero narratives, gritty ensemble casts, and morally complex storytelling in war films and beyond. Movies that followed borrowed heavily from its formula. Flawed men thrust into impossible situations, dark humor balancing brutal violence, and tension that keeps audiences on the edge of their seats. Without The Dirty Dozen, modern action and war cinema might look very different today. Yet, alongside the acclaim, controversies have persisted. Critics and historians have debated the film's portrayal of violence, the glorification of criminals as heroes, and the moral ambiguities that Aldrich embraced so unapologetically. Some even argue that the on-set chaos, fueled by real-life conflicts and dangerous stunts, should have overshadowed the cinematic achievements. Despite this, the movie endured, and perhaps that's because it mirrored life itself. Unpredictable, dangerous, and thrilling. There are also countless behind-the-scenes stories that continue to fascinate fans. From secret pranks that almost ended careers to unscripted moments that made it into the final cut, these details add layers of intrigue that go beyond the screen. Rumors about tensions between stars, deleted darker scenes, and near-fatal accidents have become part of the lore, whispered among film buffs and historians alike. Every new revelation only deepens the mystery and allure of this cinematic milestone. Even the cast's legacy is steeped in myth. Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, and Jim Brown became larger-than-life figures not just because of their performances, but because of the real personalities that clashed, joked, and brawled behind the scenes. Stories of pranks, feuds, and improvisation continue to surface, reminding us that The Dirty Dozen was as much a story of real people pushing boundaries as it was a fictional tale of wartime heroics. Finally, the most surprising fact fans rarely hear: the making of The Dirty Dozen was almost as daring as the mission it portrayed. Between dangerous stunts, explosive sets, and off-screen chaos, the film's production became a legend in its own right. It wasn't just a movie. It was an experience, a crucible that tested actors, crew, and audiences alike. And that's why, even decades later, the film continues to captivate, shock, and mystify anyone who dares to look beyond the explosions and the action into the hidden truths behind one of Hollywood's boldest ventures. In the end, The Dirty Dozen isn't just a war movie. It's a legend built on chaos, danger, and unforgettable personalities. Behind every explosion, every tense scene, and every witty line, there were real conflicts, real risks, and secrets that the world was never meant to see. From on-set feuds and shocking stunts to studio cover-ups and hidden deleted scenes, the story of the film is as gripping as the story on screen. It reminds us that Hollywood magic isn't just about cameras and scripts. It's about the human drama, the risk-taking, and the audacity to challenge norms. And decades later, The Dirty Dozen continues to shock, thrill, and fascinate, proving that sometimes the most unforgettable stories are the ones told both on screen and behind the scenes. So, next time you watch it, remember, the legend of The Dirty Dozen goes far beyond what you see. It's a tale of real-life chaos, risk, and cinematic rebellion that shaped a generation.